Hello and welcome back to the Girl Fit Method podcast. So on today's episode, I have Lou with me from the Anxiety Project. She is an anxiety and confidence coach. Welcome, Lou.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's awesome to have you. So I'm super excited about our conversation today. Anxiety is something that affects a lot of people in a whole load of different ways. It's affected me in my own life. And we're going to kind of delve into what you do and how you help others, deal and overcome with anxiety. But first, I want everyone to get to know a little bit more about you, who you are. So do you want to give us a brief summary of, where it all started for you in regards to your journey with anxiety?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm in Perth, Western Australia, and I'm a mum of two little boys. And I didn't realise how bad my anxiety was until I got out, get out the other side. And it's just, I had anxiety for as long as I could know, as long as I can remember. And I was just such a people pleaser, an attention seeker, like growing up. I had a very kind of disjointed upbringing, moving from different school to different schools. I call myself like a job slut. Like I just went from job to job to job. I could just never find that thing to fulfill me. And I just always wanted more. And I loved to party, loved to play sport. I was just an absolute goer. And I still am, but I realized I just wasn't happy. And even though I had all the things and I was doing all the things, my anxiety got worse and worse and worse. I actually went into about 4 years of depression, and it was just horrendous. And I just lost everything, every feeling. Anyone that's experienced depression, I describe it as you're so numb. It's like the opposite to anxiety. You're so numb, in every way that you can't even feel and you don't even know what's happening. And this point was this moment where I was like, I need help, because I can't even feel. And I'm like a big feelings person. And so I reached out to a psychologist, to my GP, and got the plan and went to different psychologists and started to chat. And so I did this for over a decade, on medication, changing my lifestyle, stopping, the partying, changing what I'm eating, all of the things that they say you need to do to feel better. But nothing was really working. And so it actually made me feel crazier. I felt like I must be that fucked up that this stuff isn't actually working for me, And it was so hard, because I was like, but these are the things you need to do to get better, type thing. And nothing was working.
I'm going to interrupt you, because I have a question. And that question is you spoke about almost being overly productive when you were younger. So always feeling the need to be busy and to be doing something. Because what I want to touch on is that a lot of people, only think anxiety is the person that's in the corner shaking, having a panic attack. But that's not necessarily how anxiety manifests in different individuals. So I'd love to know, what did anxiety look like for you, and how did you manage that, or how did it show up in your life?
Anxiety was like a limb. It was who I was. It is how I can explain it. I was a people pleaser. I was an overanalyzer. I was an investigator. I had to do 500 things. I had to be the planner. I was the go-to person. I was the holder of all things. I put my hand up for everything. It was just like, go, 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 go. And everyone's like, you got so much energy. You love doing this. You're putting out your hand. I was like, yeah. And I didn't realize how what I was doing was just distracting myself, masking the deeper stuff, but it's because I didn't know where to start or what to do. So I knew that if I was doing all the things and saying yes to all the things and keeping myself distracted and that go-to person, and I genuinely loved it, but it was so exhausting, and I knew that, inside I wasn't happy, but it was all I had known was to do all the things to, just completely overtake my life in doing the things, finding the next thing, but the fulfillment was not there. I'd never stop to celebrate, because the anxiety would come in and be like, you can't celebrate because then you up yourself, or then you're selfish, and then so it was just the anxiety ate the anxiety, and it was just, and I call, the overanalyzing, the people pleasing, the overthinking, I call that like anxiety's mates. So it's like anxiety, and then all these mates are in the background just waiting, waiting to come for the ride.
Yeah, it's almost like it, and it looks like from someone on the outside that you're actually a high achiever. So, here you are, accomplished, doing all of these things and achieving a lot, and people can look at that and actually think that that person is really killing it in life, when in fact, exactly what you said is it's a mask. And it's so funny you say that, Lou, because I really, really resonate with that. It's only in my adult years that I recognize that as a child, I was actually very anxious, and as an adolescent as well, through my teenage years. And that manifested in wanting to be the best. So wanting to always achieve, because I felt like through that I would be valuable and I would be wanted. And it's kind of like through achievements and doing, we think, oh, that's what's going to give us fulfillment, because from that's when we're enough. And the issue is that you can achieve so much in your life, you will never feel more fulfilled through those achievements. It needs to come from an internal place where we strip all of that away, and we recognize that regardless of what we achieve in our life, what we look like, what others think of us, we're enough, because that's what we believe about ourselves.
Totally. Yeah, you've completely nailed it. And I think what I realized was we never stop to learn who we are. We're born, we're in life, where we can't really control our surroundings or our upbringing or anything like that. And then we get to a point where just like we start living our life and trying to fit in and trying to, I say, fit in with the Joneses, trying to do all the things and be seen as this person. But who are we? Like, how do we know that this stuff, lights us up or fills our cup? And it doesn't, but it's that outside view of wanting to be somebody, wanting to feel like we belong. And so the anxiety is like inside, like shaking you, going like, I kind of explain it as like this thing inside you saying like, this isn't you, and that's where the anxiety eats the anxiety, and then it triggers, and it's just this cycle. I call it the overwhelm, anxious, shitstorm cycle. It's just this cycle of, mess inside your head. And in order to stop the mess, you need to understand where it came from and what it is. And that's what I was learning, when I was seeing all this psychologist and doing all the things. Why isn't it helping me? Because I was trying to fit these things onto something that I didn't know. So I needed to find myself in order to know what was going to support me and work for me. Because each and every one of us is so different, right?
Absolutely. I think the hard bit about that, and the reason why I think men definitely suffer with anxiety, but I think a lot of females suffer with it in the way of people pleasing and just doing. I think that's very common among women, but I think it's so much easier to do that than to stop and actually deal with the root cause, because that's the hard stuff, when you've got to look in the mirror, face yourself, and not like what you see, and know that no matter how much you try and compensate in different areas of your life, unless you stop and you actually reflect on really the deep-seated issues that you have, it actually just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
Totally. And and it transfers to the next generations. And I am a huge advocate for for us needing to break the cycle. We now, I feel, need to do the deep work for the next generations. And it's going to just be this incredible flow-on effect, because you have stronger, more authentic connections and relationships. And that, like, I think that one of the biggest pandemics in the world at the moment is loneliness. And it's because we don't have that authentic connection, that vulnerable, open connection. But we can't get that if we actually don't know ourselves, because we don't know what's being authentic or not. So we can't get vulnerable. If we get vulnerable, that's when anxiety comes in, and you have the vulnerability hangovers, and and so I think this is like, we need to make the deep work normal. Like, it's hard, but it's life-changing, and it will be world-changing for the generations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm just thinking I mean, that's the answer, right? That is the answer, is actually doing the deep work, but it's a lot harder in theory to actually do that, because I think two things need to happen. Number one, you need to be self-aware of the fact that your behavior is actually induced by anxiety, and it's not just you. Like, you spoke about it being your identity. And once again, that really resonates with me, because I was the same, right? I'm a perfectionist. That's who I am. Well, no, I have perfectionist tendencies because I have severe anxiety about not being enough, right? So, okay, once I realize that, then I need to start doing the work on who I am as a person, and why do I not value myself? Why do I feel like I need to set these unrealistic expectations for myself, which I continuously can't meet? And then that affect my confidence, and it be this horrible cycle, right? So there's that, because you need to become aware of it. And then secondly, you actually need to do it, which is hard. So that's a really big decision. I guess for you, what supports did you have in place, or what was the thing that actually helped you to do the hard work?
I think because I had done all the things, and I know that I'm a very determined, passionate person. And so I guess I tapped into that strength that I felt confident in, to be like, I'm going to find what this thing is that is stopping me from living my life. I'm sick of caring about the small shit. I need to find what's stopping me, because all these other mechanisms didn't. And I was going to therapy, and I'm a huge advocate for all modalities in terms of therapy, because we're at different points in our mental health journeys, and they're needed. But I got to this point where I was going and kind of trying to find bad stuff to talk about, or stuff like I realized I wasn't getting honest with myself, because my anxiety got in the way with someone else. Someone else there. Now I thought in my head, oh, they're going to take me away in a white van. They're going to put a black, I'm that crazy. I can't tell them what's actually going on in my head. But it was that inner self where I'm like, each and every one of us, we know ourselves the best and the most. So like you said, we have to do that deep work and get through that discomfort. But if you think about anything hard you've done in your life, and what you've gained out of that shit, like out of the hard, difficult, challenging stuff in your life, you've gained more in strength, in resilience, in adaptability than not going through hard stuff. And so it was my inner kind of drive and determination to like want to be a better mum, the best mum that I can be, the best version of myself, but authentic. I wanted to be me and own it. So I didn't have external, and that's why I do what I do, because there needs to be that person, I feel, from a lived experience that can share stories, so you can get that connection, so people can open up and start getting vulnerable and getting honest with themselves, because then they don't feel alone if someone else is doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's a very long answer to your question.
It absolutely does. And I just can't help but think about the girls that we work with and a lot of the listeners of this show who their anxiety has manifested in their appearance and them trying to control the way that they look through their nutrition, through exercise, and placing a tremendous amount of value on who they are as a person by what they look like, right? And it is anxiety. And when they come to us, usually they're at the point where they are sick and tired of doing the same thing and getting no results and being miserable. And do you know what? It's really hard to make that change. And a lot of the girls in our program, we need to work on their mindset. We need to, you know, potentially look at their habits around nutrition and look at their habits around training and change them. And that's really uncomfortable, especially when you've used those things as a way to mask, once again, your anxiety, right? And it's about having to face the ugly stuff, which is really difficult, but that's where contentment is, you know, when we no longer need to mask, when we no longer need to rely on external validation to be able to be the best versions of ourselves and actually become our own best friend.
Yes, totally. And I think, you know, that self-compassion needs to come in, because we have been this person for so long with these masks. And when I talked about that was my identity, a lot of, something that I ask is like, are you scared of losing your anxiety? Because what are you without it? And that's what I had to come to a huge realization for myself, because I thought that all these, if no one likes me now, if I don't even like what if what I find underneath, and this is what stops people, they're like, what if that's worse than what I feel now? But if you think about like what it is, it's an education process. You are learning the deeper whys. When you know that deep stuff, that gives you that freedom and that choice to make the change because you understand it.
Yeah.
It's this understanding part, and that's what I've learned when you do the deep work. It's scary as anything, but when you start connecting your why, this is why that is, that's why I react, that's my trigger, it becomes curiosity. And that curiosity, because you start seeing the benefit of understanding who you are and why you're triggered in certain ways, so you can be more confident in being like, wow, I know that that was based back here. I don't need that anymore. I can do this, So it boosts that inner confidence in being able to make that big step.
Yeah, I love it. I think what's really important as well, as you're talking, I was thinking about defining really what anxiety is, and a lot of it is just fear and control. It's this irrational fear and these beliefs that we've told ourselves year in, year out, that if, we don't have control of certain aspects of our life, if we don't react certain ways, if we don't continue with these particular unhealthy habits, then maybe the whole world's going to cave in and, we're going to lose all control of everything. Because let's be honest, like, life is hard. It is hard. And it is scary because we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't know if the relationship that we are in is going to end. We don't know what's going to happen with our health. We don't know whether we're going to get into the university degree that we want. Like, we just have zero control over so much.
No.
And it's so much easier to fall into a pattern of believing that if we can control certain aspects of our life and our behavior, that somehow we'll hold on to that so tightly that that's going to keep us safe. That's going to help us, if things go upside down, right? When in fact, it's all lies. But sometimes we're not even aware of those thoughts and those fears that we have that are irrational, that actually aren't truth.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's stuff that we have attached to in our early upbringing. But, back then we didn't have the life experience, we didn't have the understanding, and also our parents didn't have the understanding. They were brought up in this, what I like to call like the box, and it's, you're a man, you're a woman, you do this, this, and this. You're a man, you do this, this, and this, and shut up about that, and don't say that. And so they actually didn't have the tools to teach us, how to manage our emotions and what's what. And so we've attached to these meanings and feelings and fears back here. And as we've grown up, we've put what I like to call the mask, the barriers, the layers, and they just get thicker and thicker and thicker because we're protecting ourselves. But that's stuff we don't need anymore, but we can't let go of it until we understand why it's there. And that's where the deep work comes in, understanding I don't need this anymore because it actually isn't protecting me at all. It's hindering me from actually living and being in the moment. And there's this quote, that I it's in my head now. When I read it wasn't a quote. It was this guy was talking about how if you could go back and take away all the bad, hard, challenging stuff in your life, you had a wish and you could just go and take that all away. But along with it, you had to take every lesson you learnt, every person you met, every opportunity it gave you. You had to take all of that away with it. Would you go back and change anything and take anything away? And because these hard things, and I share this because when you're doing the deep work, it's uncomfortable, it's hard. But at the end of it, there's going to be this lesson, this growth, this confidence that you will gain, this understanding. And you can get through hard things.
I think if you don't do that stuff, and I know you touched on your story of, I guess, just continuing in this cycle of feeling anxious, which led to depression. And I have also experienced that in my life where I've tried to suppress hurt and fear in my life, lived highly anxious, and it's exhausting. And you get to a point where your mind and your body gets really tired and it actually can't continue to function that way. And something has to give. And usually, that'll show itself in illness in the body, and it'll show itself in depression, where your mind is just unable to constantly be living in this state of feeling like you're walking on eggshells around, in your life with everything, this highly strung person you become. Your mind just can't keep that up. And ideally you kind of want to be able to work on the deep stuff before you get to that point, because once depression hits, and like you were saying, you feel so numb, it's really hard to motivate yourself to do the deep work, because you can hardly motivate yourself to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, totally.
And that's really difficult. So I guess early intervention and recognizing this, and that's, I guess, the hope of this conversation, is that people listening can go recognize that maybe the behavior that they have in their life that they think is just them, maybe that's actually them masking anxiety that they have, and that they can start to work on the deep stuff before it gets to a point where it just compounds and becomes too much of a big issue.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And it's all in that, like you just said, being aware of yourself and your actions. And I realized my coping mechanisms were also about blaming, and I'd label it, oh well, that's that and that's that, because it's all I'd kind of known, because I had this anger and resentment and sadness from when I was young that I was taking with me. And it's those moments where you have those days and it's just like everything's going wrong and you're just like rah, and those days can also tick and spiral out into a hot mess, really. But being aware and catching yourself and taking a moment to maybe bring in what I like to call your evidence list of where you're at, and celebrating shit in your life that matters. And I talk about what actually matters to us, and majority of the time people don't know what makes them happy. And part where I was at in my breaking point was a few comments, and I'd would be say, you can't be content. Like, why you always want this? And I'd like, well, it's okay to have dreams and goals, and I'm allowed. And I was so defensive. But I caught myself and I was like, hang on a second. Yeah, why? Why do I want more? And I think there's a difference between masking wanting more to distract and being driven and passionate and achieving goals. And I realized I didn't even know who I was and what makes me happy. So how can the outside world and the people around me support me in being happy? I realized I was blaming other people and other things, but you need to find that in you first. So I always ask the question of, do you know who you are, and do you know what truly makes you happy?
Finding out about yourself, and that comes with actually learning to like yourself in all of your failures and shortcomings, because we all have them, and you can try and hide them as much as you want and think that achieving, I don't know, a certain income or a certain body or friendships or relationships is going to fulfill you, and it is not. Let me tell you that right now.
No.
You can be we even look at examples of people that are quote unquote successful in the world, actors, actresses, singers, who are at the top of their game, have incredible fame, incredible wealth, and we know time and time again, unfortunately, those people are very susceptible to mental health issues. And it goes to show that you can have it all, but if you don't have that internal contentment and happiness, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Lou, I would love for you to talk about, I guess, what you do. So obviously your business has been birthed out of your own experience, which I love. So what do you do today, and how do you help women and people overcome anxiety?
So I have a mastermind, and I take people through the exact steps that I took to find that freedom and inner confidence and not have anxiety control your life. And it's all through my lived experience. So it's me sharing my journey, my story, and it's nothing to do with the traditional stuff that's out there. And it's supporting people in finding their truth, finding who they are, and really understanding their own story. And for me, it's about sharing this message and inspiring people that they can do it themselves. But I want to inspire parents now, especially, to do the work for their kids. I have so many people come to me with their kids who my child's got anxiety, like, what do I do? And the first question I ask is, what have you done for yourself? And they're like, oh, no, it's not me. And I'm like, no, but as a kid, as a human being, every single one of us wants the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to feel like we belong. We want to be heard. We want to feel like we're contributing to something. It's not the big fancy stuff. It's not being the top of the football league. It's not, you know what I mean? And so what we need to do, and this, the message I want to share and shout from the rooftops, is we need to learn about ourselves so we can connect authentically with the kids, with the next generation, so that they don't have the scary impact of mental health, where it's going. We need to start educating our kids on emotions, on authenticity. And so I share my story. It's a lived experience story, and I feel stories is what connects. I want to help people feel less alone in the mind shit storms. And because there wasn't that there when I needed it at the most, I still felt really crazy and alone and scared, and nothing was helping. So I take people through this mastermind. I'm launching my first mastermind for guys, and because it's the exact steps, that won't ever change, but it can be for anybody that's suffering. I want to get into schools, because we need to share this message that we can do it internally.
Love it, Lou. I just can see the passion within you, and the vibe is just amazing. You are so vulnerable, and I think you're right. Vulnerability is the key, and it can be really scary to be vulnerable, but there's an immense amount of power in that, especially when you own your story. I always say, like, vulnerability is only scary when you haven't detached, I suppose, from the experience that you're sharing. So negative experiences in our lives, we can just take them as an experience and not view them as who we are, failures that we think we are. So when you detach and you go, hey, this is an experience, vulnerability is an incredibly powerful thing. And I absolutely love that. So if anyone's wanting to find where you are, your content is amazing, by the way. Where can where's the best place to catch you?
Instagram. So the .anxiety project. And I've also got a podcast, which is the Getting Vulnerable podcast. So you'll hear me getting vulnerable on all topics. So Instagram's where I hang out, and please come say hello and get vulnerable with me, but honestly, vulnerability will save lives, and it'll create stronger connections. It'll support more people, help people feel less alone. So that's something that I think we can all start slowly embracing, even though it's hard and uncomfortable. The rewards just outweigh everything.
Couldn't agree more. And I'll make sure to pop all of the links to your social media and your podcast in the podcast notes. Thanks again, Lou. I really appreciate it. I've really loved our chat.
Thanks so much for having me. Loved it.
Just pause it.